So firstly, thank you to everybody for turning out. It's really appreciated. Without you guys, we wouldn't have a show, and doing what we do would not be worthwhile. So yeah, now this summer has been a pretty rough one for everybody at our comp. I think I'm on my 5th or 6th bout of cold and flu. I've just about beaten it for the show. So what I'm about to talk about is essentially our comp running on about 50% capability. It's been a rough summer. I'm going to start with the Wakefield show because that's probably the last time I saw a lot of the faces here. I know some of you won't have made it since the last London show, but I can't quite remember that far back, so you forgive me for not remembering what we did back then. Perhaps the least exciting things that have happened since around the Wakefield show was some new and updated games releases. We did new versions of Doom and Quake, both hardware. Quake in particular was hardware accelerated with floating point maths on the modern machine, so it can now give 60 frames a second performance. If you recall, back in the old days, Quake was an absolute beast to get running on the old ARM processors. Well, now we can use the actual hardware floating point capabilities of modern ARM processors to deliver 60 frames per second gaming action in Quake on modern hardware. It works on Raspberry Pis, it works on ARM X6s, it works on Titaniums. So whatever you want to play Quake and Doom on, it's really good. The Doom is also quite fun because we've actually integrated the original soundtrack with it. So we've actually got recordings of the original sound from the original musicians and integrated the original musicians' recordings that they created for the original game. So this is actually much higher quality music than was ever available previously, because originally it was all sort of MIDI recordings and things, which required you to have very special hardware to get a decent sound out of it. What we've now incorporated is digital recordings of the original music tracks. So as you play the game, you're hearing it as the original music intended, which is something quite special for the RISC OS version of Doom. So two updates to the games. I'm going to leave the games there, but that was new at the Wakefield show. Also new at the Wakefield show was version 8 of Messenger Pro. I'm sure we're all familiar with Messenger Pro and its email capabilities. Version 8 doubled down on things like security and incorporating the features required for modern email. Messenger Pro 8 has full support for SSL-based email, so you can send and receive email via secure servers, which means you can use modern services. In some countries, for example Germany, all email is I think by law it goes over secure SSL connections. In the UK, major providers like BT and Sky demand SSL these days. If you use Hotmail or Gmail, they all require SSL. So it's very much a required feature now. Messenger Pro 8 provides that out of the box. It also supports multiple sending servers. So another aspect of email that became quite important in the last 12 months is that a lot of servers will regard email as spam unless they can track back exactly where it came from originally in the chain. And that means that if you send an email, you need to send it through exactly the right servers for, if I want to send an email from Arcom, it has to come through Arcom servers. I can't send an email from Arcom through somebody else's servers. It has to come through the approved route. Otherwise, somebody like Hotmail will regard that as spam because it doesn't have the necessary checks and balances as it goes along. So it's quite important now, if you want to have more than one email address, you also need to have the ability to be able to send email addresses through different routes. And Messenger Pro 8 integrates that. You can tell it that this email address, because it has to go out through this server and through this route, and then the software will automatically deal with that. So for example, when I send an email as Arcom, it goes out through the Arcom servers. If I want to send it as RISC OS Development, which goes through Genesis servers, automatically when I compose an email from RISC OS Developments, it gets routed through the Genesis servers without having to do anything else. And that ensures that your RISC OS email will not get flagged as spam as it goes through the system. The show we've released version 8.1, which introduced one of those daft new features that you think, crikey, did it never do that before? And that is the ability to automatically fetch mail when you load Messenger Pro. You think to yourself, every email client on the planet can fetch email when you load it, but it didn't do it before. And the reason was very simple, that historically RISC OS email programs were the last thing in the chain. So you would fetch your email with something like NetFetch or back in the day things like Voyager or Dial-Up or Anti-Internet Suite, and then you would run your email client when you were offline quietly and do your email. So it made no sense for an email client to fetch email. Nowadays, of course, we all have always-on internet connections, and the distinction between being online and offline and everything else is completely irrelevant. So it, of course, makes perfect sense that the email client should automatically fetch mail and send mail when it runs. Well, now it does. So that was the big new feature 8.1, plus a few bug fixes. So Messenger Pro 8.1 available now. Much of the summer after that has been taken up with RISC OS development. And I'm sure you've heard Richard talking about the work that has gone on with the acquisition of Castle and the open sourcing of RISC OS. And you can imagine that many, many hours of work went into all of that. But what I thought we'd concentrate on is the very practical, real-world results that procedure has made possible. Because it's all well and good for Richard to stand up and say RISC OS is now open source, but the question is, what does that mean for you as a RISC OS user? What does it mean for the RISC OS market as a whole? And what does it mean for RISC OS on a global scale? So what I want to do is actually put the pieces together of a chain that I think, when you actually stop and think about the start and the end point of the chain, you may want to take a sort of deep intake of breath. It starts with Castle talking to us about the acquisition of Castle and the IPR, and a general sense that we want to move towards an open source future because we feel that the existing Castle license arrangements are not a healthy one for the operating system. For those who aren't familiar, the Castle license term did allow the source code to be made available through RUL previously, but if you wanted to do with anything with it on a commercial basis, you had to pay money. Now that money could be up to £10 per unit that you sold. So if you were a big company, let's say, don't read anything into this, but if you took a big company like Samsung and they come along and they're interested in an operating system for an ARM processor, if they want to put RISC OS onto a device, they're potentially going to have to pay £10 per unit that they sell to put RISC OS on that box, which is obviously a ludicrous arrangement. I mean, they'd be manufacturing millions. It'd be cheaper than buy RISC OS than it would to do that. But actually it was even worse than that, because if they paid the £10, it didn't mean that they could just get on and do things. They would actually then be obliged to feed that code back to Castle, who would then have ownership of that code, and could potentially sell that code for another £10 to anybody else that wanted it. And you can imagine that from a commercial perspective, anybody who looks at a license like that isn't going to go anywhere near it. It's an absolute non-starter. And needless to say, the only people who ever bought licenses from Castle were the companies that you see gathered around this show, for whom the actual RISC OS brand was the reason that they were making it. If you're selling a computer for £600, £10 for a license doesn't really make a great deal of difference. And similarly, if you have to give the code back, well, that's okay, because ultimately it leads to more computers that you can sell in future, so hey, it all works. What the open sourcing allows us to do, which is something, I have a person in America who works in big corporate networking, and he was saying to me, why isn't RISC OS on a mobile phone, Andrew? And I have to say to him, well, RISC OS is great, but Google couldn't build Android on RISC OS because it's crazy licensing. There's no way you want to do that. But if it was open source, at least then we're on a level playing field with something like Linux in terms of actually how it's developed and how it's made available. And that itself has been a crucial aspect this summer of approaching the rest of the world. Because armed with the open source possibility, we were able to talk to various people around the world about alternative operating systems for ARM processors. And believe it or not, there is actually an interest in the rest of the world in alternative operating systems for ARM processors, because ARM processors are everywhere. And there are a lot of companies producing devices with ARM processors in. And often what they want to do is make that those machines as widely useful as possible, because what they want to do is sell the processor, sell the hardware, sell the boards, etc. Whatever their company is doing, they want to sell the product. And if that means running RISC OS, hey, that's brilliant. If that means running Linux, that's cool too. But most of them have already done Linux, so I mean, they can go and get 100 different flavors of Linux, but it's all basically Linux. And that's not really interesting to them. What they are looking for is other alternatives that are open source. And I need to stress those two words because it is very important. They aren't interested in products that have stupid licenses associated with them, like RISC OS did. So if we'd gone to these companies with a license like the Castle license and said, hey, we've got an operating system, but you know, you'll have to pay £10 a unit to distribute it, they're going to laugh you out of town. We were able to approach them and say, look, here's an operating system, it's got open source, it meets what you want, it's another box, it's not Linux, it's completely different, it can boot in a matter of literally a couple of seconds on your hardware, it can deliver a desktop operating system just like a Linux box, so it's an interesting product. Are you interested? And you know what they say? Pardon my French. Hell yes. I'm just going to repeat that. CEO of a Far Eastern company comes on to a RISC OS company and says, send me your operating system, I want to run it now. Not just once, but repeatedly. They come on IRC, which is a common way of communicating with these companies. They're demanding builds to run on their hardware. Not us begging them and clawing at them and saying, can we please run RISC OS, please? They're saying, no. What does it take to run RISC OS? We want to run RISC OS on it now because we want to see RISC OS running on it. Now, admittedly, they don't really care about Ovation Pro and all the other programs that we love, because they're not, you know, they're not sitting in the audience today. But the point is, they want another box that they can stick on their website that says their hardware runs Linux, their hardware runs RISC OS, their hardware, etc., etc. It's something that's different. It's something that's new. It's something that is tangibly good. I mean, as I say, if you can turn it on and be in RISC OS in a couple of seconds, if you try running a Linux on it, you know that that's not, I mean, if you ever try running Linux on a Raspberry Pi, you know that it works, but it's not, you know, it's not going to win any speed awards. RISC OS flies, so you've got something that's very different to what they're used to, opens up their hardware to other options, and suddenly they're saying, what can we do to get RISC OS on our hardware? So, in very practical terms, that meant that through the post arrived free laptops to our developers with documentation, with the hardware engineers sat on the other end of IRC links to answer questions, to make RISC OS run on a laptop. For the first time in 30 years since Acorn produced the A4. So if anyone in this hall says to me, why is RISC OS going open source, I'm going to point to you at that and say, beat that. That's what it's all about. It's all about making RISC OS viable in a global ecosystem where it has to compete with the likes of Linux and other operating systems. Now there may be reasons why you can say, oh well, Linux is much better because it does Linux. That's fair enough. We're not having that conversation today. The conversation we're having is RISC OS is now a viable alternative for companies on a global scale to run on their hardware. And they want to run RISC OS on their hardware. And that is the global vision of RISC OS developments, and that is the global vision that I'm bringing you with the Archon talk, specifically with this piece of hardware. That is made possible by RISC OS developments, and that means that other companies can benefit from that global presence that we're trying to do with RISC OS developments. I'm sure Richard has explained to you that the actual open sourcing announcement has been reviewed all around the world. There's China, there's Poland, there's Germany, there's obviously the UK, there's America. For the first time in probably 20 years, RISC OS is getting onto mainstream news and industry tech sites. Suddenly RISC OS profile has gone from down here to up here. I'm not going to put my hand up and say right up here because there's still work to go. But that's what it's all about, and that's what RISC OS development has achieved this year. And that's with one of us only working at 50% because you've got colds every other week. So that's what it's all about. Now, even if we make no further progress, I think we've gone from a place where essentially RISC OS was going nowhere, but puttering along, to somewhere where it can flourish again. And then our job that we're going to try and go from here is to do all of that and scale up. Because once you start to make progress, you start to gain the traction. There's no point going for sort of trying to talk to somebody and they turn around and say, when was RISC OS last in the news? And you say 20 years ago. It's a joke. Now we can say, when was RISC OS in the news? Well, actually, it was on the mainstream news sites last week. Suddenly you're relevant again. And that's what it's all about. So, on the stand, you can see the laptop, which has got a approximately 1.2 gigahertz ARM processor, a couple of gig of RAM, and if I trying to do this in like this is always awkward. You can see it's not too much of a slouch. Performance is between, but generally speaking, it's at least an ARM X6, probably slightly faster in terms of performance. So it's certainly no slouch. Battery life is always a good conversation to have. You probably know this is going to be good. I mean, in the weeks coming up to the show, I wasn't bothering to charge it. So I was working on the laptop, firing it up, testing RISC OS, does it work? Have we got a problem? Fixing it, taking the card away, putting some programming on it, plugging it in, doing a bit more work. Now, granted, it wasn't working all day or anything like that. I was probably running at sort of half an hour every couple of hours. But in about sort of 10 days up to the show, I didn't have to charge the laptop. As it is right now, it's been on since first thing this morning. 56% battery still remaining, so that's after probably 5 hours of running. So you're probably looking at a real-world battery. This is without any significant power management working either at the moment. So you're probably looking at real-world 12, 13-hour, 14-hour battery life with the screen on fairly high brightness, with effectively no power saving. So I think that's, not too bad. At the moment, it's quite capable of running RISC OS applications like Ovation Pro, Artworks, etc. There's still more to be done. I mean, it is still early days. For example, only one of the 2 USB ports works because we need to do some tweaks to get the second one going. That's quite normal. The ARM X6 had 2 USB ports on the board. One of them was very easy to get going, the other required you to sort of effectively invert it. But we did that with the ARM X6, so it's a similar thing on this. It's just a case of you work through the jobs in orders of importance, and you need to get the screen working, and you need to get the keyboard working, and you need to get the disks being reliably, not breaking directories and things. And then you need clocks so that the date stamps and things all work. And, there are things, there's orders in which you tackle things, and getting the second, if you've got one USB port, you can work with it. The second USB port then drops down to, well, it'd be nice when we've got the other things sorted. Similarly, sound, there's no risk it's currently mute. There's no particular reason why we couldn't do that, it's just that, top 10 list of things that we want to get fixed. Sound was not a high priority. We'd like to get to grips slightly closer to the hardware. At the moment, it uses a small chunk of Linux to actually kickstart the hardware. This isn't particularly ridiculous. Panda board, Beagle board, both do exactly the same thing. So it's exactly no different to what RISC OS is doing on most other hardware. I think Pi has a sort of firmware binary board that kickstarts it. So this kind of approach is quite normal. But with IMX6, we got very, very fast boot ups because we were able to actually wrangle the hardware and actually kick in right from the moment you hit the power on. We grabbed the hardware, configured the hardware, and ran with it. We'd like to do something similar with this because that will sort of knock another sort of 4 or 5 seconds off the startup time and give us fine-grained control of the hardware. At the moment, for example, you're seeing it displaying a picture, but if you try to change the screen resolution, it kind of goes all squiggly because it knows about that resolution of the screen because that's what the hardware defaults to. and that's what the operating system is delivering. We'd like to wrangle that so we can actually tell it about other resolutions and go in and out of different resolutions as required. So there's a ways to go. But what I wanted to show you here at the show is the fact that an open source RISC OS has allowed us to get this far in a relatively quick period of time and deliver a solution that is unlike anything that you've seen for, as I say, 30 years, more or less, since the A4. I know there were things like this, the prototype Stork and the RISC Station laptop was promised but never delivered. I would like to stress that the difference between ourselves and, say, the RISC Station laptop is that I can actually let you play with this hardware and see it working. As I'm the only limiting factor to be actually giving you them to take away today. Well, A, I want to stabilise the disk stuff, and B, currently they're supplied as unit by unit from the Far East, and I'd like to actually get a bulk order of them in. Otherwise, we're going to pay customs duty like you wouldn't believe. On the individual units, it's about £40 custom thing for each unit that comes through. So we'd like to sort of get it into one big order and get a sensible shipping and what have you through. So you can find at the front door and on the stand we have forms about that. You can fill out the forms if you're interested in that. The other device that we brought out over the summer, just in case you thought we were slacking, is a new version of the ARMX6 architecture. You've seen the full-size ARMX6. Actually, this particular presentation today on the screen, I know I haven't really done much on the screen, but hey, you know, it's me. I tend to talk rather than show. It's bad practice, but there we go. Is the Minim, which I don't know whether you can see. It's quite small, 2 inches in each direction, basically. That has essentially all the functionality of the ARMX6, which is the full-size ARMX6 in a 2-inch cube. And we're not kidding, it's literally as fast, it has all the same features, you can do all the same things in something that you can put in your pocket. The only things that it can't do are the things that you can physically not do because it's 2 inches cubed. So for example, you're going to have trouble fitting a CD drive into it. But you've got a USB port, so you can connect a USB CD drive, so we can live with that one. Also, the average solid-state disk is sort of about this sort of size. Again, we have a slight problem when you're in the cube that is this sort of size. That doesn't mean you can't connect a solid-state disk to it. It has what's called an eSATA port, which is basically, E is for external. So you understand that a SATA port has a high-speed connection to a solid-state disk or hard drive inside the computer. An eSATA port, E for external, does the same thing on the back of the computer. So basically, you can connect up an SSD or other hard drive to the computer via the eSATA port to get that same functionality that you would get with the ARMX6 inside the box. Similarly, card readers, things like that. Again, you've got a physical size constraint, but you've got USB ports so they go on there. You've got the same gigabit Ethernet, you've got an HDMI port that can do 4K graphics. The reason why we were a bit late starting was because, in fact, I got this thing to set output a 3840 by 1440 ultra-wide desktop. On the stand, we've got the smallest computer driving the largest monitor. So we're now connecting it to a 720p teeny tiny display, so I had to reconfigure it to run on the teeny tiny display. So that was the delay. So we talked about, we've got audio, we've got HDMI audio out of it, so you can connect it up to anything. We talked about USB, we've talked about eSATA, and we've got gigabit Ethernet, so that we can connect it at high speeds to our network storage or run it as a network storage device. Internal storage is up to 200 gig, and in line with the small size, we've also attached a small price tag to it, so it's about half the price of an ARMX6 as well. So we hope that you find the Minim to be appealing. I think the portability of it is brilliant. Certainly, a lot of the units that we've sold have gone to travellers who can carry it around with them. You say, well, why do I need that when I've got a laptop? Well, the beauty of the Minim is essentially that you get all the functionality of your desktop PC that you can stick in your pocket. So at home you can connect it up to SATA devices and things and have the full RX6 experience. You can take that on the road though. You can power it via a single USB port. So on the stand, we're actually powering the computer from the monitor. So instead of actually putting it into the mains, the minim is actually connected to a USB port on the monitor, and the monitor is powering the computer, not necessarily. So if you think what has a USB port in life, a USB port is now pretty much everywhere. I mean, right now it's actually being run on a battery thing for charging your mobile phone. I would suggest to you that the flexibility that that offers in terms of a computer that you can carry around, power anywhere, connect up via HDMI, you can power it from a monitor, from a computer via a USB port, you can connect it up to a projector, you can buy projectors for under 100 quid on it on Amazon, short throw, low resolution projectors. You can put that in a briefcase and you've got a portable projection system. The things you could do with a small computer like that, to my mind, are not quite endless, but certainly there's an immense flexibility there. So I think that's a really exciting addition to the armoury of machines. And whether you see it as an ARM-X6 for a home user that's half the price of the full ARM-X6, admittedly, obviously that's half the price without things like the CD drive, the solid-state disk, card reader, and other functions that you would get on the full ARM-X6. But on the other hand, as lowering the barrier for entry, getting it at half the price is certainly pretty desirable. And then you can expand it as you go. Or whether you look at it as a travelling companion. One guy flies between the US and the UK on a regular basis. He has it in his suitcase, or probably I think he has it more or less in his hand luggage. And he's got all of his data and his computer carrying with him. He can connect it to his 4K screen in the office and run a super high resolution. He can use it for projecting. He can do whatever he likes with it. And that's available right now. We have them at the show for people to take away. Also at the show we have a selection of monitors, ranging from small, I say small, 23-inch 1080p units up to 27 or even these super wide 35-inch units. They're all competitively priced, so you can buy the smaller one. I think we're asking 139 for, which is extremely competitive for a full HD IPS top quality panel. Display, good, excellent colour calibration, etc. The 27 inches, all of the screens are IPS because we don't do anything else. We only do the high quality panels because, quite frankly, life's too short to have poor colour quality, poor image quality, and for the sake of a few quid, it's just not worth it. So we have a range of computers, of displays, and the other big thing that we released this summer, now that I think about it, or rather just recently, is hardware graphics acceleration for the Minim and the ARM-X6. So just in case you thought we were idling, we thought we'd do that as well. Basically what this does is make the actual visual display, the movement of windows, the scrolling of documents, etc. on an ARM-X6 and a Minim up to 10 times faster. If we can switch the input, I will actually use the display because what I'm going to do now is something that you never do in demos, and that is I'm going to show you the worst possible aspect of the ARM-X6. This is the thing that we groan and cringe and we say, oh no, did we really show that? Apple would never do this. Microsoft would do this, but it would be a screen of death when you weren't expecting it. But, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit F12 and I'm going to type modules. I don't know how. I think you'll see the effect. It's usually. I will stress that the higher the resolution you go, the more this is significant. So we are actually running extremely low resolution. At 720p, it's 1280, 720. It's very low resolution, so this may not be as pronounced as it would be on a higher resolution screen. But we'll see. I think it'll still demonstrate the effect. Sorry. Helps if you actually turn off the acceleration if you want to show it at its worst. Okay, we're done. Now that's that's actually quite good, in the sense that if you go any higher, it's like much lower than that. And I'll turn back on the acceleration and we'll just look at that again. So that's the kind of difference we're talking about. Now, it's not always as pronounced as that. That's the sort of show you the Achilles heel and show you how it's fixed. In practice, when you're actually operating the desktop, you're not trying to shift every pixel of the screen in every frame. But if you think about scrolling down an edit window or something like that, if you ever use your document, I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one who likes to run programs full screen. When I'm working on a document, I want as much of my document visible as possible. So when I'm scrolling, I'm replotting and replotting and replotting through the document as I scroll. Every time you do that, every time you move a window around, the hardware acceleration is going to kick in and actually make that smoother and faster. So for example, if I mean, as I say, this at low resolutions, this can be less pronounced, but if I open a full screen edit window, you can see that that is beautifully smooth. If I stop it, it's still pretty smooth because it's low resolutions, but if you're not convinced, come and try it on the big screen on the stand, and you will see it's night and day. Basically, as you get up to full HD at 1080p, it starts to be really significant. And as you go higher, the higher you go, the more having hardware acceleration in the desktop makes a huge difference. So that's available now. We have actually had to charge for that this time. For the last 3 years, all the ARMX6 upgrades that we've produced, I think we've done 12 official operating system updates and about 5 major disk image upgrades and things. So all of that has been delivered free of charge to our customers and enable all sorts of upgrades and enhancements and features free of charge for the RX6. However, this time we have had to fork out a sizable sum to get this work completed, so I have had to make a charge. So we're charging $29.99 for the graphics acceleration. If you're worried that that will split the audience into have and have not, don't worry. All the operating system upgrades will still continue to be free of charge, and they will still work on all of the machines. So this basically just adds on an extra bit of performance to people who are willing to support the development of that. And if for whatever reason you choose not to support that, then you'll still continue to get the free upgrades and things that we do, and they will still continue to make the machine better in all sorts of other ways. It's just this particular module is an add-on module. It makes your computer faster, and to help cover the cost of development, we are asking for a contribution on it this time round. I think I'm probably going to stop there because I feel like I've been talking for a very long time and my throat's starting to hurt. It has been quite a few months, I think. If you have other questions, one last thing, we finally also released Pi 5 version 3. That brings the experience of, if you like, proper wireless networking with proper user interface, icon bar icon that shows you how your signal strength. It turns a Raspberry Pi into a wireless access point, so you plug it into any other RISC OS computer or indeed any other platform of computer, they can access Wi-Fi through the Pi. On the stand we're showing it with an ARMX6 using Wi-Fi, and with the Pi 5 version 3, as I say, you have an icon bar icon, it shows you your signal strength, you can click on it, you can see the available Wi-Fi networks, you can click on the one you want, type in the password, click connect. And it's totally integrated into the RISC OS desktop, just like you would expect Wi-Fi to be on any other platform. And that works with the Pi is connected to the back of the computer. We're powering the Pi through the computer, so we haven't even had to have any external power. We just hook them up, and Bob's your uncle. We're using Wi-Fi on RISC OS with a nice desktop interface. Away we go. The actual desktop interface is free to download on Plink Store. With the Pi itself being the operating system disk that goes in the Pi, and that's what we're charging the money for. But obviously they work together in tandem to deliver Pi. So that's available at the show, and you can come and see it in action. We're actually using it to access the internet on one of the ARMX6s on the stand. Although the Wi-Fi here is not the greatest, so. But I would argue that's not our fault. So yeah, I'm going to stop there, I promise. Except for questions. If anybody has anything they would like to ask, then now is the Jim at the back got his hand up first. I'm sorry, guys. I knew 3 hands went almost simultaneously. Jim was the first.
What about Wi-Fi on the new laptop?
That's a brilliant question. You'll see on the actual order form, or on the description of the laptop. Basically, the laptop, Wi-Fi is the primary networking that's on the laptop hardware. We are planning to include a USB Ethernet device in the box for RISC OS users, so that if you do ship it without Wi-Fi, you will still have access to the internet through that. However, what you'll see on the form is that we're trying to gauge what sort of price that people would be willing to pay for this, because we essentially have two approaches. The actual hardware itself from the Far East is specifically designed to be low cost. So there is nothing to stop us putting the unit out at an extremely competitive price. The problem that we have is if we do that, then we don't generate a great deal of income to actually pay programmers to do work. And that's not a particularly healthy business model. So what we're trying to do with the thing is gauge what is a fair price. And we're not asking for thousands of pounds. I think the choices on there are $399 or $499. So it's not, ludicrous things. But the question is essentially, would you be willing to pay £100 more with the idea that that would allow us to fund projects like Wi-Fi for RISC OS? If we can get sort of 30 or 40 people to commit to £100 for Wi-Fi, then that gives us £3,000 to £4,000 to put in the pot to get Wi-Fi happening on RISC OS. That sounds like a very good place to start to me. So that's why we're trying to sort of gauge the market as to what people are willing to accept for the price for that, and see whether it is practical to use that as a springboard to funding that piece of development. But that is quite a, let's pull no punches, getting Wi-Fi native on RISC OS is a sizable job. It might be something that we look at as a joint project with RComp and RISC OS developments working together. So, RComp putting up some money, RISC OS development putting up some money, with the idea of benefiting all of the different devices so that we can release something that maybe unlocks Wi-Fi on not just this, but also unlocks it on things like Pi 3, things like that, as a wider goal. The wider we can stretch the net, the more funds we can make available, the more worthwhile it becomes. If it's just for this laptop, then obviously it would just be just RComp funding, because it's only RComp that would benefit. I don't think that's in the interests of the open source mindset. I think we want to probably try and make that as open as possible so that RISC OS as a whole can have Wi-Fi. But that's a conversation we need to have offline as to exactly how we fund that work. Something I didn't mention, which I think I would like to mention because I think it's quite important. With the open sourcing, one of the big risks that, something that I actually lost a bit of sleep over, is that we could end up with people forking the operating system with different open source versions or closed source. The actual license that's been used actually allows for other closed source components to be introduced. So there's nothing to stop somebody taking the open source operating system and producing their own closed source version. So in theory, we could end up with RComp OS, CJE OS, LSR OS, etc. And this isn't beyond the realms of possibility, because we have seen already that some of the people who've used the Castle licensing hardware have had to, I think with good reasons I might add, but there are closed source bits of code in RISC OS where they haven't returned the source code because either they're under NDA or things, but you can't necessarily just go and look at the source code for every bit of RISC OS and every bit of hardware driver that exists for different boards. So what with this in mind, I don't want to see the operating system fall. I don't think that's a healthy thing. I'm very conscious that RComp have been able to produce, ARMX6, the Armini X, the Armini, these machines, because of the way Castle opened up the operating system and the work that's been done by the likes of Jeffrey Lee, etc. And if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have the products that we have now, and the opportunities that we have now wouldn't exist. So I'm very conscious of that. So the goal that I'm throwing down to the other companies is do as I do. I'm committing that our company is going to feed code back into the thing, just as we did under the Castle license. And I think that's the right way to go about running an open source project, and try and hold it together, because if we start going our separate ways, although that's possible under the license, I don't think that's a good future. So what I'm saying to the other vendors of hardware is, don't make CJEOS, don't make LSROS, don't keep it under your hat. Try and operate as we have done in the past under the Castle license, because that way we all benefit from the progress that's made, and we can all do new projects in the future. A future where we're all trying to cut each other's throats. That's not going to win us any favours, even within this room, let alone on a global scale. So, yeah, as I say, challenge made, as it were. Next question.
On that very same point, with the graphic accelerator, which I've just
thank you.
Are you going to feed it back into the mainstream after a suitable period of time?
That's a very good question. The code is actually, for that, has been done under the GPL, which is not the same as the license that's for RISC OS. But actually the source code for the graphics accelerator is available on request. So you don't have to wait a period of time. If you want to see that code, drop me an email and I will happily share that code with you. I'll talk to Adrian Lees, who actually did the code, who's actually at the exhibition, and he'll show you the code.
The license, the Castle license,
yep.
Did Castle just sort of copy that from Pace?
Not really. I think they kind of. I may be doing them as a service, but I think back of a postcard when they were down the pub was possibly a slightly more accurate thing. I don't believe that license was ever a Pace thing. I think it was just something that was. They wanted to have control. I mean, don't get me wrong. There were very good things about that. I know I've been quite rude about it in the talk. That's a bit unfair, because one thing that the Castle license did ensure was that we did feed our code back, and we have the problem that I literally just talked about of potential forking didn't occur under the Castle license. So there was, I did not begrudge paying my £10 to Castle for the license, because I actually felt I was getting extremely good value from that. Indeed, when we first started doing the Harmony, we actually paid the same money to Castle as to RISC OS Limited. And there's a slightly funny story, because RISC OS Limited wanted 3 times as much money, but they didn't have an operating system that would run on the hardware. But we said, what we're going to do is we're going to pay you Castle, and we're going to pay an equal, an exact amount to RISC OS Limited, because we can see both claims on the desktop market that, to our minds, were both equally valid. And so we said, we'll give you the same amount of money as you. And that was the agreement that we had with those companies. In all fairness. Oh, that's another little thing. Sorry to keep remembering things, but there's been so much going on. I have been in touch with Aaron, who deals with RISC OS Limited. We have agreed that all the old Castle RISC OS Limited nonsense is behind us. We put it to bed. So again, for the first time in 20 years, threats of lawyers and all this kind of nonsense gone on both parts. And we are now working together with an idea. I mean, don't get any wild ideas of the 2 operating systems magically coming together anytime soon. There's still a long way to go. But for the first time in a very long time, people are able to talk to each other civilly, sensibly, and have proper conversations. And I think that's a big step forward in and of itself. So I don't know quite where we started, Dave, but hopefully does that answer sort of?
Yes, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I know where I've got the wrong end of the stick from what you said at the beginning, but was it Castle that approached you to buy it?
You'd need to check with Richard, because Richard had the connection there. The point of contact for a long time has been John Balance, who was lead programmer on the ARM-Make6, so we both have contact there. But Richard and John have known each other for a very long time, and Richard at various points has either worked for Castle or at least worked on their stand. I think he was possibly offered a job but didn't take it. There's a very strong line of communication there, so I think Richard would be the one to answer that. There was basically a dialogue that basically said it was clear to us that there was an opportunity to be had. I'm not sure whether it was. I mean, Richard's been trying to buy RISC OS off Castle for a very long time. Probably you can trace it back. Quite often over a pint, he said to John, "What would it cost to buy RISC OS off you, John?" I think for the first time, the management at Castle were actually amenable to the idea that maybe their time had passed and it was time to look at a different future. So I'm not sure whether it was they that approached RISC OS Developments, or whether it was another sort of Richard asked the right question at the right time, and they said, well, actually, you know, for once it might be worth putting together a bid and saying what you'd like and what you'd like to do. And the bottom line is that that was a deal that was possible, and that was able to happen. Sorry, I'm a bit vague on that, but I acted as a consultant on some technical issues as opposed to actually being in the room when things were initiated. So it's not difficult for me to answer exactly that. Yeah.
Just going back to the laptop route. With respect to some about a bit more for Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
You mentioned about Capcom and RISC developments doing something.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've also got the practice. And I know it was tried in various courses these days, the Select scheme had an element where you contribute. Isn't it time to sort of look at how the the various companies work with RISC OS Open Limited, RISC OS Development, yourselves, and so that we've got.
Yeah, I mean, in case it hasn't been clear, I don't know what's going on in the talk that I was before because I was on my stand, so forgive me. Obviously, you've got RISC OS Open to come. Don't be under any illusions that RISC OS Open have been involved with this process every step of the way with us. So essentially, it's been, okay, this was the actual acquisition of Castle was done under the RISC OS Developments banner because RISC OS Developments was able to raise the money to make that happen. And what RISC OS Developments brings to the table is the ability to tackle large projects. I think, we've had multiple meetings with RISC OS Open since then. The last was just a couple of weeks ago, and constant dialogue with them. So there is a very close relationship on this. There's a reason why the code has come out under RISC OS Open. However, in terms of actually looking at, you're talking about paying regular funds, I think the funding still needs to be targeted. One of the problems I think that Select Scheme had, and I say I don't want to bang this because there were some excellent bits. I mean, on my email system runs RISC OS 4.39 under Virtual ACOM because that offers me a very flexible environment for what I want to do with that. So I quite know the charms of the Select Scheme. But what I didn't like about it personally was the fact that essentially it was money into a black hole. You didn't really know what that funding was going for. And there were some aspects, and I don't need to pull out specific things, but just because it's an easy to sort of target, sorry Justin, rounded corners on buttons. It's not what you necessarily pick as the first choice use of the funding that you're putting up. I mean, I know it was added as a sort of in the evening off books thing, so it's a very soft target, and I apologise for that. But I would be a bit concerned about general funding like that maybe being a bit thing. I think I prefer the idea of targeted funding, and we've worked with RISC OS Open to do the SSL bounty. But again, one thing that's left that I think possibly. I don't want to rule anything out because I think every project needs to be done on its own merits and its own basis, and finding the right people for the right job is absolutely key. But I have been conscious that SSL bounty was supposed to be a relatively quick thing, and it's taken the best part of a year, and it's still not actually reached out of beta yet, as far as I know. I don't want us stuck in the same situation. I mean, that's a relatively small project. Wi-Fi is a big project. I think possibly it needs finer, closer management than we saw there in order to make sure that we can make it happen on a very tight time scale, because we don't want to start something and end up having to fund it for 2, 3, 4 years.
My general point was 13 or 14 people expressing an interest in the RISC OS laptop.
Yeah.
It's not as much as
yeah, but on the yes, yeah. And I think that's where we need to come. I think RISC OS Development needs to look at ways of doing that. Obviously, the raw boundary system is there, but whether that's the way to tackle a big project like that, so I think that's something RISC OS development needs to listen to you on, and I think we need to actually come up with. We don't have every answer to every question from the get-go, and I think the point you make is incredibly sound, and I think we need to look at exactly how that's going to feed in. And the practical point. Sorry, the reason I'm sort of sounding a bit vague is because my brain is clicking, and I'm thinking about technical hurdles like how to get money into accounts, and plus credit card and PayPal and all these other practical points about how to. So far, RISC OS development has been funded with large investments because that has allowed us to get together the funds that we need to do jobs. But when there's a very different scale where we've got investors investing thousands of pounds versus people spending sort of £10, so I'm just clicking through my head the practicalities while I'm trying to answer your question. So I think that's something I need to take offline and have a conversation with Richard about, and probably yourself and the rest of the community, because I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. We just want to sort of think about how we do that and see what's required.
Andrew, I think we're out of time now.
Yeah.
You're 5 minutes past already.
Okay, I'll follow it up.